It's a pleasure to see my good friend Raj Bhakta, founder of Bhakta Spirits, also of WhistlePig whiskey. I've known him for many years, and we're finally going to catch up here and taste some delicious spirits. How you doing, Raj?
I'm great, Tom. It's been a while. Good to see you, brother.
Hey, it's great to see you too. And I like that Raj already has a cigar going. I'm going to be joining on a cigar shortly, but I'm going to
the only library in America where you can smoke a cigar.
This is the only live I have. Then I have to come hang with you. I really do. I do. So this is the campus that you have as Bhakta Spirits, and as you
tell me, Bhakta-GRISWOLD, as we call it, Tom. Bhakta-GRISWOLD. We've rechristened the campus, which used to be Green Mountain College, into Bhakta-GRISWOLD.
So this used to be a college campus. How many years was it around for then as a college campus?
200 years nearly. It started in 1834 and then kind of went out in 2019. So kind of, I guess it's sad on the one hand that it ended as an educational institution, but happy on the other in that it's being, repurposed and used well and kept alive in education. We got a school going on here. We did a lot of education on spirits, and took the library and added a whole bunch of different interesting barrels. So it's, it's being utilized well for hospitality and education.
So you educate people on spirits. You have students that attend. Is it regularly or more for these types of classes?
We have a couple different things. Yeah. So there's actually a grade school on campus where my kids go and kids in the local community. It's a whole college campus. And then we bring our friends and partners, particularly our accounts, bars, restaurants, retailers, distributors, by invitation only, to come up and, participate in a 3-day cadence. First day is about revelry, and the next day is about relaxation and creation, where they can create their own blends in our lab. And the third day is about revival, where we take a little bit of a health and wellness angle to it. And I think it's the only, spirits distillery tasting experience where you leave feeling better than when you arrived.
Yes, I'm sure it is, because a lot of times it can take its toll. Other types of experiences can.
We both know that, Tom, don't we?
We do. I can't wait to come join you in Vermont in 2024. And again, Raj Bhakta, this is something that is fairly new as far as the release, but there is some really old spirit in here. This is the 1928 rye whiskey blended with Calvados and Armagnac. Tell us about this. I just took a sip. I'm amazed. This is really
so cool. 1928. So Tom, you're in a unique class, but how many times, if any, have you ever tasted spirit that is 100 years old nearly?
I've done it a few times, but it's not often. I mean, it's pretty rare that I've.
So we called this 1928 to celebrate the oldest vintage in that.
Wow.
That's 1928. Have you ever tasted something nearly 100 years old? Then it's got 1941 in it, very rare war vintage. 1962, 1973, which I have here, number one spirit in the world recently, and Paul Picolt's competition.
Beautiful.
Long story short, what this is combining my experience from WhistlePig and rye whiskey and marrying that to the world of these ancient French vintages. And together, they pair very beautifully, right? So we took the spice of the rye that's complemented by the Calvados, and then you've got this long, creamy finish. So 1928, which is really a story of history and marriage of America and these ancient French spirits, the result from a flavor profile is really exquisite. And this is something that people can buy at less than $100, which gets them spirit that's nearly 100 years old. 5% of this is over 50 years old. 30% of it's over 30 years old, with an average age of about 15 years. But I talk about it all the time. You taste spirits all the time. Tell me, what are you picking up?
I do get some of the Calvados in there. I mean, the Calvados is jumping out. the Armagnac, all of these layers, the rye, some nice spice, some nice floral.
Oh, you get the rye nose, then in the palate you pick up some of the fruit in the middle. You feel like on the nose you're drinking a whiskey, but then it's kind of like, oh, there's something else interesting going on here that I've never quite had in a rye whiskey or any whiskey before. Well, that's these really old notes of Calvados, which, as you know, is from the northwest of France, in the Normandy region. In the southwest comes Armagnac. That's a grape brandy and apple. So this is grain, rye meets apple meets grape in one product. It's 100 proof, right? But this kind of dances like a 400 pound lineman. Who's moving around like a ballerina. Doesn't hit you hard. I think it's the greatest blend I've ever put together.
It is something that's so, and you do get those layers, right? You get it goes for me from the spice, the floral, the rye, down into the Calvados. I'm getting towards the middle, and then it rounds out.
Whiskey. It's whiskey mostly, but then there are these other notes that kind of. I think it brings. It's one of those 2 + 2 is more than 4, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And to me, look, I love history. I know you love history. You've got some really, really old stuff in there. And, literally 5% of that is above 50 years old, average age of 15 years. And I don't want to go, off too much in a tangent, but I think average age is something that people need to get into because it's better than if I said that was a minimum age of 15, it would be much more linear in its flavor profile. You want a high average age because it's like average age is, you got some 100-year stuff in there, right? From 1928. And then you've got some 5-year-old rye in there. So it's 5 to 95 years old. And so if we're thinking in people terms, that's like being able to combine, the elegance and wisdom of age with the vigor and power of youth. I mean, I'd love to be able to go back with my 47-year-old head and drop into my 18-year-old body. I think I do a whole bunch of different and interesting things. What would you pay for that, Tom? What would you pay?
For the bottle or to go back to my 18-year-old?
No, yeah. What could you pay to take your
priceless? But this is somehow letting us do it through time, isn't it? And just the thought of what we might do, especially if you and I teamed up to conquer some type of a little world, I'm sure we would have some fun.
Have some fun.
Yeah, but we're staying young. The time travel. I love the time travel element. This allows us to really dive into those flavors.
Yeah, think about that. We've got in here Calvin Coolidge is president.
That's right.
The Roaring 20s are still alive. America's booming with the oldest vintage in here. I mean, rock solid booming. Immigrants coming into the shores by the millions legally. And this was the greatest optimistic decade nearly in American history. I'd say probably in American history, period. The automobiles are hitting, electricity's hitting, the telephone is hitting, the country's on a huge roll. Then you have 1941, which is an extremely rare vintage where this is from because the Germans have invaded France. Great. I mean, it's a big war year, right? But these war vintages are very rare because when the Germans came into France, they sucked up all the valuable stuff really quickly. And so this vintage is extremely rare, the 1941, 62 vintage in there. You've got the space age, Kennedy's president, very optimistic era in world and American history. You got 73, Richard Nixon, Watergate, Vietnam is winding down, not quite as happy as 1962 as a time. But this is history in a bottle that everybody can buy. You know what I mean? The most everybody can afford $70 on a bottle of spirit.
It's amazingly priced.
For that, I think it's the greatest value in the world of spirits by far. Right. There's nothing on the shelf that can take you back into 100 years in the sub $100 price point. Again, and not just a little bit of it. 5% of that's over 50 years old. 30% of it's over 30. with an average age of 15. So it's not like, oh, there's one drop of old stuff in here. It's otherwise,
It's a fair amount.
young stuff. This is deep and rich, and it tastes
Really,
like.
how old is the rye that's in this again? The rye is
2018 vintage. So what is that? 5 coming up on 6 years?
Yeah. Are you able to tell us where the rye's from? Is that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's Indiana. It's MGP.
Indiana rye. Great. I'm going to put the website up here too, so that people
and it's actually a little bit. I don't know. I mean, you might know better than me, but I understand it's an unusual mash bill. 51% rye, 49% corn.
How much experimentation? Did you?
Oh my God, that
experiments?
That product took 2 years. It began in the backyard of my chateau in France.
Right.
But I mean, we really labored with that to get it right. And, we knew that we wanted it to be whiskey forward, that it should be for whiskey drinkers, and it should sit in the whiskey section. But, we tried it with more Armagnac and more Calvados and more whiskey and what type of whiskey. And, it kind of moved, it moved all around. But that was a solid 24 months of very active, blending effort. So 1928 is designed to steal the show, deliver an amazing product that tells the story of these vintages of 1928, 1941, 1962, 1973. I mean, nobody else in the world can do this. We're doing something that nobody else in the world can do to open the door to, the world of vintages like our 1973 that we're going to taste, like a 1962 that we're going to taste, like a 2013 bourbon that we're going to taste. So you want to do that one next?
Perfect. Yes, I'm going to pour this 2013 bourbon, get a little bit of that one. And again, what a beautiful place we started with. When you're looking at Armagnacs and Calvados, I mean, what's the adventure like for you finding these rare old spirits to blend in for the spirit world? How do you find it?
It's a really cool thing because, you travel all around the world, and what I try to do well is find things that other people overlooked, didn't see the value in. Armagnac overall, but for example, this bourbon, very unusual mash bill, 99% corn, right?
Yeah, that is.
So you would think that this is going to be kind of flat, just like a corn whiskey, sweet, uniform. But when you get into it, this is an example of Bhakta vintages. I look at myself, perhaps, in my my 12-year-old brain when I'm watching Indiana Jones, going through all these interesting parts of the world. I mean, I'll say it. I feel like I'm the Indiana Jones of spirits, and we don't have to follow really any rules since I own the place, other than a singular vision. That we never add any coloring. We never add any sugar. We never, screw around with anything that way. But other than that, we can blend however we want to blend, like we did in other things. And the single vintages need to be amazing. I think we achieved that very well here.
You have, and again, this 2013 bourbon finished in Armagnac casks, right?
Finished in the 1973 Armagnac.
1973 Armagnac cask. This is really something. Just you get the bourbon, but it goes these places into some earth, into the sweetness. Maybe I actually, and again, I'm going to be lighting a cigar here in a little while with you, but I get a little tobacco and that beautiful tobacco note on this.
Yeah.
As well. This is really beautiful.
Really beautiful, spectacular 10-year-old bourbon, which I think is a kind of a perfect age for a bourbon, right? I think you can get a great bourbon in 5 years. You can get a wonderful bourbon in 5 years. But I think you start hitting optimal. Of course, I'm generalizing, but you can hit optimal range at like 10, or 8 really. And then pushing past 12, 13, it gets kind of iffy. You really can get too much oak after that. I mean, of course, I'm generalizing the hell out of the matter. But 10 years a nice sweet spot for a deep, well-aged bourbon. And I think and why drink vintages? Because spirits change. A bottle changes. But if you find, just like a wine, vintages have been dominating the wine world for a long time.
Yes. And again, the vintage bourbons rise. I mean, we're seeing more and more, and we have for a while, you and I have, following the trends. And and going to some of these bars like Jack Rose in DC that was doing this years ago, but more and more the laws are allowing in Kentucky and other states bourbons that are vintage, rye, scotches that you wouldn't have seen several years ago. They're on the shelf. You can drink these, say a Weller from many years ago, a Blanton's from 1990 I had a few weeks ago at Neat.
Right. So different, right?
Yeah. People are and is that part of what has driven your excitement for
Absolutely. I mean, like it goes back to my initial release of WhistlePig was in 2010. And I think it was 1999 Canadian Alberta juice.
Right.
I think that's the best we ever did. And so if I had put the vintage on that bottle, that would be worth $10,000. Maybe more, because that was the best vintage we ever put out. This is something that I'm just playing around with. I'll send you a bottle of this. It's this Minnesota bourbon that I'm bottling here. That
you're bottling this one now, this Minnesota bourbon.
Yeah, I'll send you one of these. If I put it out, you guys should keep a lookout for this too. It's amazing. Excellent. I've never had more flavor.
Just how limited are these? The 1928, for example, is this something that's fairly limited that you're going to do only one run of? How's it working?
1928 within limits is going to be a consistently available item.
Okay.
Obviously, with the 2013 bourbon, it's a vintage. That'll be, we're done basically shipping that out. So whatever makes its way through the system, that's it. And then with the other ones, I have some supply of these vintages, but does that Chateau Bhakta work? Okay, so you got it right.
Either of those work. You can go either place to find out where you can find it, either in your region or you can order it, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Either of those. Those are the places to go. As we talk about Armagnac, I mean, again, let's
get into the Armagnac.
Yeah, as I told you, I've always loved Armagnac. I was lucky enough, and I'll give a shout out because they're still great friends of mine. Bourbon Gordon Jones, my French teacher, and her husband went to France with them when I was 16 years old. We often have drinks together still. And, yeah. They actually live a couple blocks from me. What a coincidence! How
about that?
French teacher, yeah. So I was so lucky going to France at 16. I was in Nîmes. We went all other places, but I was in Nîmes. Nîmes is in southern France. It's known for, there's an aqueduct there that's a Roman aqueduct, not too far away. Pont de Garde is what it's called. We went to, but I had an Armagnac. That was my first spirit I had. The parents signed off. I could try.
Did you get drunk?
I think I got a little buzzed. My parents signed off and I should thank my parents too for signing off on that form.
Where did you grow up, Tom?
In Indiana, southern Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've always loved Armagnac, and I've always thought, even since then, it has something that's so different. That I love cognac, other brandies, some great American brandies nowadays, but Armagnac has something that's so unique and elegant. Of course, made in the Gascony region, Southwest France. There must have been something that really got you excited about Armagnac to start.
It's like everything that we talk about in craft, right? Yeah, everything that we talk about in craft. Everything you can imagine, right, of what American craft whiskey is, double it,
right,
triple it, quadruple it, multiply it by 100, and that's what actually exists in Armagnac. These are, you distill there for really most places for a couple of weeks out of the year. Contrast that with an American modern, distillery. And there's a guy with a bunch of computer screens with the big gulp and the Cheetos thing there. You know what I mean? Running it, and it's running like it's a fully automated factory,
right?
And so produces great product. We had a wonderful bourbon from a big distillery. There's nothing bad to say about it. But on the romance side, oh my God! I mean, Armagnac. I mean, these are small 50, 60 acre, and that's big. The farms making wine, that they then distill from a still that rolls around on a tractor that is fired by wood, that they then, distill over a couple of days and invite their friends over because they got to keep the thing running 24/7, and they make a party out of it. And the single vintages elements, and the fact that when I found this distillery, this chateau, it had every single vintage going back to 1868. I mean, it's like the non plus ultra of craft and history in a bottle. And of course, I fell in love with it. And it's like an accident of history that it hasn't really made it out of France. It takes a 73.
Yeah, let's do the 73. We can talk about all of them, but 73 is the one that I just poured a little bit.
Can you see like the label on the screen there?
73 too here. The 73.
Okay, perfect. You can see it on yours. You can't see it on mine.
Yes.
So this 1973, this was rated number one, not number two, number one, Spirit of the Year, thousands of competitors in Foucault's competition.
Incredible.
Chairman's Trophy, and 99 points. Why? Okay. This would have been distilled in the fall of 1973. This has got all of the richness and complexity. Why does it win this kind of thing? It's the richness, the complexity, the flavor. Also, I don't think the romance played a role because these guys didn't know what they're tasting. But can you imagine this goes back to when, this is when Watergate's breaking, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, it is.
Vietnam is winding down. The first fuel crisis is beginning. This is history in a bottle, and you can buy this. It's like we have low self-esteem or something, Tom. You can buy this for $400. Now,
amazing.
Can you touch anything that you know of coming from the spirits world, in the world of whiskey? By the way, this costs 5 times as much to produce. Anything in the world of whiskey that is remotely comparable from a value standpoint for something this kind of age that tastes good.
This is why it's so intriguing to me as well. Not only is it delicious and I love it, but when we're thinking about bourbons that we might have been able to 8-9 years ago to get for $100 or even $50. I mean, we all know how much some of this is going on secondary market for, but no, I mean, when I saw $3.99, I was amazed actually.
Like, it may sound, I'm gonna sell this anyway.
Sure.
We have, I was very fortunate in creating WhistlePig and made a fortune doing that. So what I'm getting at is not as self-serving as it may sound to say to you and to your viewers, buy 2 of all of our vintages. Keep one as an investment and drink one to stock, one to rock. The 1973 is an amazing opportunity for that. And I think that even if you think about it, the 1962 might even be better than that, because after 1962, if you look at, or before 1962, rather, that is 61, 60, etc., the prices go into the many thousands, and you can buy a 62 for something like $600.
Getting, such deep complexity. We're talking about everything from spice to chocolate. I mean, this is going.
A lot of chocolate.
A lot of chocolate. This just has tons of chocolate in it, and just the elegance of it. It's the sweetness is there, yes, but the palate, you have some nice peppery notes, nutmeg. I mean, it's going into all kinds of different sugars too. It's not just like just a sweetness. The sweetness varies so much. This was in the barrel for how many years?
50.
This was in the barrel for 50 years. Not only was it made in 73, it aged. You dumped it this past year.
Maybe 49 and a half.
But it's still been about 50 years. This has really seen so much. 45% of the Armagnac production is consumed in France. 55% is exported. Whereas if you're looking at cognac, 98% is exported. 2% stays. I mean, there's a certain amount that stays, but it's not.
Yeah, the French drink Armagnac. They don't drink cognac.
Right. They drink the Armagnac. Though I'd like cognac a lot too, but a lot of it leaves. How much before you started doing this, when you were looking at the numbers, how much Armagnac really was making it out of that 45% of what they made to the U.S.? It's not a huge percentage, is it?
So without getting fully into history, you had these kind of broke English hustlers that arrived in France that were trying to think, what can we take to the rest of the world to sell? That never happened in Armagnac. Accidents, it's just one of those happenstance. I mean, I walked into this chateau, Tom. The guy had every single vintage going back to 1868. Think about that.
That's incredible.
I mean, is there anything in the world that you can think of? We don't have anything like that in America.
No, we don't.
Like that in Britain.
We don't. Do we want to? And I have a couple more, and again, in just a moment, I'm going to transition outside. A couple questions though, as I'm pouring. Let's do the rum next. Why don't we do the rum, and we'll go right back to Armagnac. But as I'm asking a little more about the Armagnac, are all these Armagnacs coming from the same place? Are they different houses of Armagnac or Maison in France? Are they?
I'm going to quickly answer that question.
Yeah,
this is from. I mean, our stocks go back to 1868, so they're from hundreds of different farms.
Right.
I bought it from a collector, not a seller. In other words, for 5 generations, the family, they had a side business, main business, not a side business. Their main business was in shipping. And so they would look at Armagnac as kind of like a purchasing hobby, et cetera. Many times when you have these old vintages, why? Because they were not very good, many negotiations. Many people, but Bhakta's vintages is why, for example, our 1973 and all of our different vintages that we're entering into these competitions are winning so many, because these are really, from the beginning, selected by a collector as the very best vintages in the region, year to year, over the past 150 years, if you can believe that.
Right. It's incredible. I just poured the 1990 rum just to get a little bit more.
This rum is going to blow you away, Tom. I'm just gonna be quiet on this one and let you react to what you taste.
First of all, I can taste so much depth on this. How old is this rum?
So it has 2 different vintages in it, 1985 and 1990. 1990, it's probably spent of its life. So it went from Jamaica. This is what makes this so unique. It went from Jamaica, then it goes to Canada. It spends its time in old rye casks, aged rye casks. Right? Do you taste that flavor explosion?
It's huge. This is going so many places.
Boom. So this was Caribbean rum, Jamaican rum, pot stilled and column stilled, that then went to Canada, spent time in old Canadian rye casks that picked up some of the rye spice in the slow aging climate of Canada. Then it went to Tennessee, somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains.
Right.
We spent some time in bourbon barrels. Then it comes to Vermont, spends some time in Armagnac barrels. This is a one of one. You can never. This is the best. I'll say this is the best rum you're ever going to have in anybody's entire life, hands down.
There's so many levels to this. There is this
bone dry and spicy with the flavor explode. It doesn't drink like a rum.
There's an explosion, but on the end, there's a beautiful, like, not in a bad way, a restraint. It doesn't just keep on blowing up with sugar. It calms down. Yeah. It rounds off. It's
a very dry rum, right? This is not a beautiful finish. Well, it's a rye barrel, and a bourbon barrel, and an Armagnac barrel.
Okay, it's all 3 of them.
The rye is giving it that spice and dryness that I think you taste this in rum. The bourbon, to tell you the truth, I don't know. Like the bourbon's probably like coming in the middle. You get some bourbony notes, and then I think you're picking up the Armagnac on the finish as you're describing. You're giving it like a little bit of dryness and astringency that gives you a clean, crisp finish.
I'm going to put this up here again, and as I promised, I'm going to join Raj here in just a moment for a cigar.
Well, let's try the 63.
The 63, and then we'll do the cigar. Tell you what, I want to have you describe the 63. As you do that, I'll be listening, but I'm going to put you on full screen as you describe that, and I get set up with my cigar. How's that sound?
Sure. So the 1963 really demonstrates a couple of different things. the uniqueness of Armagnac as a whole, like this is a 1963 single vintage Armagnac. This is the year that JFK gets assassinated, right after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Europe is coming out of the disaster of the Second World War. The crazy time of the 60s hadn't really begun. Vietnam hadn't begun. So things are looking great at this time from an American standpoint. Europe is coming out, very optimistic times. We're looking to the heavens, to space as a species. Kennedy has said that we're going to put a man on the moon. We drink spirits for flavor, and we drink spirits because it makes us feel good. You can do that in a way. You can drink Pop-Off or whatever cheap vodka that'll, give you a buzz. Or you can really appreciate deep history and the finest single vintage spirits known to man. And that comes out of Bhakta, Armagnacs in particular. You're transported back into time and space, obviously into a more optimistic era. In Armagnac ages, you get more kind of notes of it tastes more like, as we're entering the Christmas season here, it tastes like more like rum cake, Christmas pudding. It's like deep. Yes. You get like a prune, fig, like raisin chocolate. These notes come out.
It's kind of like that Christmas, Christmas pudding they do in Britain, isn't it? Just a little bit. Yep. When they say exactly bring us the figgy pudding, right? The figgy pudding, it's been brought.
Bring us some figgy pudding. Yeah.
That's what it's like. This is beautiful. Again, 1963. When you're looking at the price point for this one, you said it's around 600 or so?
600 change. I mean, you basically pay about $10 a year. Right. A little bit more, a little bit less. And then after 60, 63, 62, it just takes off like a rocket. By the way, what cigar are you having?
All right. And again, I know some people have been asking down below if we're going to finally have cigar together. This is the Cohiba Serie M. This is a limited edition done every year. The only Cohiba in the world that's made in Miami. It's a very beautiful limited edition. It's made at a factory called El Titan de Bronze. They hand roll all these. These are some of the finest rollers in the world, and it's just beautiful with spice and just some great wood notes. It's really lovely. Which one were you having?
I was having, I just pulled the wrapper off. I'm having a Padron 1964 anniversary series.
You've been traveling the world the last few years, all the way from France. You've done Jamaica. What's coming in the world of
France, Jamaica, Colombian? So we got some interesting Colombian rum.
Yeah,
we're probably going to do a single vintage old tequila. I got some great Indian whiskey.
We'll be seeing a tequila in 2024 from you, probably then.
2024, we're going to have a special release a 2010 or 2011 single vintage Indian whiskey.
Indian whiskey, wow.
Yeah, an Indian single malt.
So we have an Indian single malt coming, possibly a tequila and.
No, so 2024. So 2024 is like staggered release is going to be. I'm doing a 2013 rye that's coming out shortly. Then next is going to be the 2014 bourbon. Single vintage. Then comes the Indian.
Okay.
And then comes a 2005 18-year-old bourbon. So what do you think the price should be on an 18-year-old, 2005, 18-year-old Bhakta, single vintage, limited edition bourbon? Everything's coming out in a different finish of Armagnac. I generally don't go to where everybody's, doing everything. If for whatever reason a unique batch of Kentucky bourbon comes along, we'll look at it. But I think that market is very well served, and everybody wants Kentucky bourbon, and everybody's doing Kentucky bourbon. So, they have Kentucky bourbon, no problem. What I try to do as a brand is find things that the big houses and the main players are not looking at, right? Either from a single vintage standpoint, whether that's an Armagnac or the unusual bourbons, or the blends that we put together. No, and have you ever tasted, I mean, you know this business inside now, have you ever seen anybody put rye, Calvados, and Armagnac together?
I had never seen it, and it is one of the most delicious creations I've ever had. It truly is. It goes so many places. You're thinking it's just like what it's. I know it's not a. It doesn't taste like a cocktail, but it is a creation, a mixology of just different areas of the world and flavors that you've just blended and found so beautifully. Do you still plan on keeping Armagnac and French spirits as a large base of what you're doing? And we're going to see even more of those coming?
There are 3 regions in the world that have deep, grand distilling traditions. France, called the British Isles, England, Scotland, and Ireland, and America. And the 2 of those, like America and Scotland, Ireland, came from the Scotch-Irish, right, the Celtic blood of the British Isles. And I think those are the 3 areas. And then you had that influence hit India, right, and Jamaica. So this is kind of like called the British Empire, along with the French, their distilling tradition. The Americans, when I say the British Empire, I mean it was the Scotch-Irish who left Britain, came to America, primarily came to Appalachia, right? And they're the ones who got whiskey going in America. And so this is the kind of rootstock that came between really the Celts. And by the way, actually, interestingly, the French are Celts too. So the real world distilling traditions comes from the Celtic people, of which I'm half Irish, so I'm happy to say this. And then it kind of spread through the whole world. So we're focusing on, the distilling traditions of the United States, the British Isles, and France, and then their diaspora, throughout the world. That includes India, of course, Jamaica, and all these places. I mean, that's where the world spirits come from.
The rum, again, I'm trying it with this Cohiba Syrium, and I sent you a couple of those, so I'm excited to hear what you think. I think you'll love the pairing. Again, just the spice of this cigar. It's a beautiful, spicy cigar. Has some nice creaminess. It's hitting just the really explosive, delicate flavors that are just so layered of this 1990 Jamaican rum in a beautiful way. What's this rum go for? The rum goes for, what a bottle does this go for?
Rum's about $500.
It is.
But the reason that this rum is priced like this, because you'll never get another rum flavor.
Oh, you won't. I've never had a rum like this. Of all that you've done the last 3 or so years on Bhakta Spirits, what's been your very favorite? I mean, I'm sure it's hard to pick, right? It's always one of those tough questions, but what's your very favorite?
This 2013 rye that we have coming out, I'm extremely proud of.
Right.
Kind of my return to a pure rye. The 1928 is amazing.
It's so different. Yeah.
God, it's so tough to say. I would say the 1973 Armagnac is an amazing find. The 1928 is an amazing creation and blend. Boy, it's like trying to pick amongst children.
Oh, it's so tough. And if you're watching this now, there's a chance that some of these are, because we're going to keep this up always, there's a chance that some of those are still around. You can go to the website and be watching for the new releases. And the only library in the country you can smoke from, Raj Bhakta is joining us from that in, what's the name of the town in Vermont again? Tell me. Poultney, Vermont. Man, it's so good to see you, and happy holidays.
Great to see you.
Merry
Christmas, happy holidays, all that sort of good stuff. Tom, you take care, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, and thanks to your team, Al, Andrew, everyone who's helped out with this. We really appreciate it, and thank you, Raj. Cheers.